Hello, Dave with URAL Motorcycles. Welcome back again. Last video, I installed a bumper on this Frankenstein green machine here. This bike started out as a 2014. It was not equipped with a bumper. It was also not equipped with a spotlight or driving lights or fog lights. So I thought it would be a good candidate to mount the bumper on. And now what we're going to do is add the lights to this bike. And this bike was actually converted, even though it's 2014, it was converted to the Gen 2 EFI. So it has the new harness from a newer bike. So the pigtail to tie into the SIDECAR 12-volt accessory outlet, which this bike doesn't have, but we're going to add, is already there. So if you were going to do this to an older bike, like 2016 and older, it can still be done. The best way to accomplish that would probably be to tie right off of the battery, go to a distribution block, a fused distribution block, run some wires up under the tank, and then from there you could actually add the 2-pin connector that would connect to the fuse panel that we sell for the SIDECAR for 2017 and newer. Now, if you're not comfortable with a 12-volt electrical system, we definitely recommend that you seek out a professional to do this installation, or contact your local URAL authorized dealer or service center for questions or to have them install it for you. I have everything spread out here on the tabletop. I want to go over it one more time just to make sure it's clear as possible with my limited vocabulary. So again, here is the 12-volt accessory side panel for the SIDECAR. It has an extra toggle switch which you can tap into if you want to add another accessory. It has a European plug, smaller European style. Some heated clothing uses this here in the United States, and some other accessories, maybe like a heated blanket for camping, depending on where you purchase it. And then if you want to convert that to the standard US size, we also have this conversion cord in the shop. It plugs into the European style and brings it out to the what you'd typically see in a car here in the United States. Inside here, you have several unused 15 amp fuses, and then you have a 4-pin relay, and then you have the wiring itself. There's a grommet already on here. This would mount inside the SIDECAR. It would be on the left-hand side. There should be a provision for the screws already there, because it's also the same size right here as the mounting bracket for the SIDECAR windscreen. So if you had a SIDECAR windscreen, this would slip under the bracket. And you see how it's slotted here, so you can just loosen the bracket enough to slide this in behind and then tighten everything back down. On the wiring, there should be, in most cases, there would be a hole already down at the bottom of the footwell on the left-hand side of the SIDECAR for this to pass through, and then the grommet would fill that hole. And then you have 2 connectors which are opposite each other. So one of these connectors is plugged off in case you don't use it. But if you were to take the cap out, the protective cap, you could wire in the handlebar switch, which, as you can see, plugs right into that. And the power going to the panel is on regardless whether the ignition is on or off, and that is on purpose, so you can charge different things or use different accessories. What prevents the lights from going on and off would be this handlebar switch, or a switch of your choosing that is rated for the same, for the correct amperage, And then if you want to wire in your own switch, say you don't want one on the handlebar, but you want one up on the dash cluster, you can actually use our connector kit, which is available on the shop as well. And it actually allows you to plug into this harness without clipping anything and splicing it in. Gives you a cleaner connection. You can disconnect it if you take the sidecar off. It's just a nice convenience. If that was plugged in, that would switch the power going in from the bike, from the battery, charging this panel up through the switch, and that would turn it on or off, activating the electromagnet inside the relay, which would switch this on and send power to the lights or the spotlight or whatever you got. Now for the power going into this, if you have 2017 or newer, the pigtail for this, if it's not equipped on your bike already, the pigtail for this would be up under the tank, and I'll show you that during the installation. It's usually zip tied up to the backbone of the frame, if it's right under the tank, if it's not utilized from the factory. If you were to wire from your older bike, the battery area, go to a fused distribution block or fuse block, and run the appropriate gauge wire up under the backbone, out the tank, out from under the tank and down the front strut, you could make again a connection that wouldn't require you to cut anything off or splice anything in with this plug here. Now this plug is also available in the shop. Now for the lights we're going to be doing today, we have our lights here. If I was sitting in the sidecar, these would be facing front of the tub, facing out. I'm sitting in the sidecar. This is all wired in already. And then to make the connection here, you have two LED lights with waterproof connectors. These would run down the front bumper, and you could drill the bumper and run these internally if you wanted. And out the back, there's a plastic cap on the end of the tubing. You could actually drill a hole and run these out the plastic cap, or however you want to do it. Most of the dealerships, when they get these and set them up brand new, if they were equipped with these, they would just zip tie the harness to the underside of the, or under or inside of the tube front bumper, and you almost can't even notice it with some black zip ties and some nice routing. So with these, like I said, you make these connections right here. It's 2 into 1, so you only have to deal with one pair of connectors here. Then this white wire would have normally been the positive going to the old spotlight. Now it is actually going to energize the lights white to white, and then your ground, your unused ground, see this big grounding lug here? It's got several grounds coming off of it. The ground on the panel is brown, so you make that connection right there, and that's all it requires to wire up your fog lights. And then you still have your switch available for something else, and then you have a couple of things coming off of here that you can tap into to put whatever you want, you know, USB charger or some other accessory that you could put inside the sidecar. Now, if you don't want to use this for this, you could also, and you didn't want to worry about putting a switch somewhere else, although it is convenient to have it up by the rider or the pilot, you could wire this into the switch and have it activated from inside the sidecar, just on and off like that. However you want to do it, there's a couple different options. This whole setup does give you plenty of ways to do that. And like I said, this is available in the shop, the 12 volt adapter plug, the fog lights, either in with the yellow lenses, or you can get them in clear as well. The 12 volt accessory panel is now up in the shop, and the handlebar switch, as well as the different connectors. All this is available, but if you do get the connectors, Just keep in mind you're going to need a different kind of crimper. It's actually quite specialized. You can get these online or in most auto parts stores. We're working with electrical on this job, so it is imperative that you disconnect your battery. Find that little pigtail that I was talking about on the 2017 and newer wiring harness that should be tucked up under the gas tank. Oh, that looks like it right there. Okay, there it is. You remember the connector I was talking about? See, that's the same connector. So on an older bike, if you want to draw power from back by the battery, you could make your own version of this to run down the front strut and connect directly into the wiring harness for the 12-volt accessory panel. Now we're going to remove the plug. Like I said, it should be on the lower inside of the footwell. This is the plug right here. I'm just going to take a screwdriver and pop it out. Now I'm going to place the fuse panel in the sidecar and snake these wires through. Oh, I should have taken the cap off. But I'm not going to fit the grommet yet because I want to run the wiring for the lights in here too, and it's easier to fit it through the grommet before it's pressed into the hole, and then you have the outward pressure. And then those slotted holes I was talking about, those are going to go here and here when it's finally installed, with a couple of 6mm screws to hold it in place. And it's up out of the way, and then you can tuck the wiring away and route it nicely. If you had a sidecar windscreen, see how the windscreen bracket mounts? So I don't know if I can hold all this in place, but this would mount behind it, and then that would sit on top. You can get the lights mounted because we're going to be running the wires for the lights into that hole where the grommet is. And it's pretty simple. You got the top of the bracket, and then you got the lower clamps. 6mm hardware, 4mm hex key, Allen wrench, whatever you want to call it. And I like to get all four started into the little inserts that are, see how that's a little loose? Get all of them started, and then you can crank them down evenly. Once you get to a point where it's secure and stable, before you finish tightening, you can align it side to side, and then I usually put my fingers in the back, make sure it's just slightly below level, facing down just a little bit, and that's a good starting point until you get them angled to suit your needs. Once it's positioned where you want it, then you can go back and tighten these, and I aim for an even gap on the front and the back, and never had to tighten these a whole bunch, just nice and snug. And this thing like does not move. It'll shake the whole sidecar before this thing moves. You can work your wires a little bit, straighten them out from the kinks from packaging. Once you got it fairly straight, you can plug the lights in. I'm going to zip tie that up under there. You want to get it routed close to where you're going to have it. And then I'm going to put it in the sidecar and pass it through that grommet. Now these little grommets are sometimes, trying to do this so you guys can see, they're sometimes hard to pass these wires through, but what I found is if you got a pair of snap ring pliers, you can help stretch the grommet. Like so. With it so tight, you can ensure that there's not going to be much water intrusion or moisture coming through there. And then you can stick your little grommet in there, and then once it's fitted, you can pull wire in or inside or outside as you need it. And then I usually get the grommet set with a little bit of help from a little screwdriver. There it is. See, I can move the wires in and out to suit the length I need. And while you're here, you can go ahead and make the connections if you want, since the battery is disconnected. Remember, white to white. And then you got the this unused ground here, which is brown. That's going to go to the black. You work that plastic around. Just like that. And you can just take all the unused things and tuck them away. Maybe put a small zip tie around everything to make it all nice and clean before you put it up. But that's up to you. Now I'm going to take some obnoxiously long zip ties and my side cutters, and I'm going to start by bundling these up behind the light and zip tying those behind the bracket, and then start zip tying the wiring going back so I know how much slack I have to take up inside. Not the cleanest job I've ever done, but it will work for the video. Now we are going to mount the handlebar switch that will turn the lights on and off. But to save me some aggravation, I'm going to remove the existing zip ties just to give myself a little bit more working room. That way I can pull this harness down a little bit. I'm also going to clean a little of this funkiness off where it's going to be mounted. Try and take your kinks out, straighten out a little bit, make it easier to route. And then you got to loosen these two screws on the back of the little clamp. Now, usually a number 1 Phillips, or a, what is this guy here, 3/16 flat, which is not the biggest, it's right in the middle. With this particular switch, I have actually had better success with the flat bladed part. It'll accept a flat or a Phillips. I've actually had more luck getting some traction on these with the flat blade. So you're gonna remove these. Once you've got the bracket out of the way, you'll see this little piece of rubber that's floating around here on the wires. Just put it against the epoxy, and then having the wire exit out the bottom, and then I start in an easy to work part of the handlebar. Little tiny screws and my clumsy paws don't always work well together, but I just get a couple threads going and then you can move it into position. Make sure that little rubber piece is back there. And then what I do is once it's up there in position, I tighten the top until it bottoms out. And then, because the bottom one's still loose, you get just enough wiggle to get that position facing up towards the rider or the driver. And then you can access the bottom one from underneath the master cylinder to tighten it up the rest of the way. There's just barely enough room to get your tools and work around there. See? Nice and firm, wire coming out the bottom. And then you can zip tie it up with the other wires. Now I've routed the rest of the wires down with the other bundle off the handlebar. I added an extra zip tie, but it's kind of loose, just so it will help kind of retain it up there and keep it out of the way. And then I'm going to route this behind the clutch cable, and then it can meet up with the other wires on the sidecar strut and stay out of the way of most things. I'll zip tie these together, and then once the connection's made, this will pretty much all be bundled together. I know I keep repeating myself, but I want to make sure that it's clear because we're talking about electrical. So the connector that's on the end of the switch that is the factory switch, that is the match for this one, which is also on our website, like I said. So if you do want to use your own switch and wire this connector in so it's plug and play into the 12-volt accessory panel, you can do that. And then what that gives you is an option to use a switch of your choosing that is rated for the same, for the correct amperage. Just know that the wires going into this is just an in and an out. Basically the power is making a loop through that switch. There's no ground. So if you buy an illuminated switch, you'll have to deal with that to light up the LED or whatever's inside the switch. There is no provision from the accessory panel. Now I'm going to do the same thing I did on the handlebars. I'm going to remove the old zip ties just to save myself some hassle. This is the harness that goes across the bottom of the frame under the tub and supplies the power and signal for your lights. So I'm going to clean up this thing. It's a little dirty. Then what I'm going to do is make all my connections. You can zip tie all that together as a bundle. And then the stuff that came out of the accessory panel, remove that cap. So literally just match up the connectors. Like I said, they're opposite each other. We've got a little extra here that we can tuck back up behind the headlight. But once you're happy with the routing, then you can go ahead and add some zip ties. Again, not my best work, but gotta do what I can for the video, right? And then back in the sidecar, you can see I already got my hardware started. And then I'm just gonna slide this back behind the hardware. And then the excess wire you can just tuck up behind this reinforcing rib in the sidecar. And then, like I said, you can organize your wires back there and zip tie them up out of the way to prevent anybody from kicking them when they put their legs in here, however you want to do it. So we're down to the last few steps here. We're going to reconnect the battery. Side panel on, and we'll check our connections. Now it says in the instructions if we did everything right. Yeah, look at that. Nice. On, off, on, off. Just like it was supposed to be that way, right? So that was a little bit of a long video, but if you made it all the way through to the end, I gotta tell you, I truly appreciate it. I always appreciate you folks that watch these videos. If you're interested in any of these items that we covered today, you can always go to imz-ural.com, click the shop tab, and it will take you to our online store. And if it's in stock, you can buy them directly from us. If you have any questions about installation or you would like it installed for you, please always feel free to reach out to your local URAL authorized dealer or service center. And I thank you for watching, and we'll talk to you next time.